You're driving home on a Friday night in Florida. Up ahead, you see orange cones, flashing lights, and a line of cars slowing to a stop, a DUI checkpoint. Your first thought might be, can they actually do this? Can police stop every single car on the road without any individual reason at all? The answer is yes. Under specific conditions, the courts have approved. But what happens inside that checkpoint, what you're legally required to do, and what you're not, is very different from what most people expect. In this video, I'm going to walk you through your rights at a Florida DUI checkpoint, what they can lawfully ask you, what you don't have to answer, what to say when you're sitting in that line, and when a checkpoint stop can escalate, and what to do if it does. Are DUI checkpoints legal in Florida? Yes. The United States Supreme Court addressed this directly. The ruling was that DUI checkpoints do not automatically violate the Fourth Amendment's protection against unreasonable seizure. The reasoning was that the public safety interest in getting impaired drivers off the road outweighed the minimal, brief intrusion of a standardized stop. Florida follows that rule. DUI checkpoints are legal in this state. But legal does not mean anything goes. For a checkpoint to hold up legally, it has to follow certain requirements. The decision about where and when to conduct it should be based on data, not individual officer discretion. There generally needs to be advance public notice of the checkpoint, and the actual stopping of vehicles has to follow a neutral formula. Every car, every third car, rather than leaving it to individual officers to decide who to stop. If a checkpoint was improperly conducted, that becomes a defense issue worth examining. But for this video, let's focus on what you're walking into at a legally run checkpoint and how to protect yourself. Can you turn around before you reach it? This is one of the most common questions I get about checkpoints. If you see a checkpoint ahead and you want to avoid it, you can turn around. As long as you do it legally, make a legal turn. Use your signal. Don't cut across medians. Don't make a sudden illegal U-turn. Don't drive erratically. If you turn around lawfully before reaching the checkpoint, police cannot stop you solely because you avoided it. Legally turning away from a checkpoint is not, by itself, probable cause for a stop. That said, if you make an illegal turn in that process, or if your vehicle has a visible equipment problem, a broken taillight, expired plates, officers now have an independent reason to pull you over. That has nothing to do with the checkpoint. So if you're going to avoid it, drive normally and turn legally. But if you're already rolling slowly through the line, trying to cut out at the last second, that's more likely to create a problem than solve one. When you pull up to the checkpoint, here's what police are actually authorized to do. They can briefly stop your vehicle. A checkpoint stop is supposed to be short. It is not an extended detention. The whole point is that it's standardized and brief. They can ask for your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance. You are required to provide those documents. They can observe you during that brief interaction. How you look, whether they detect an odor, how you are speaking, how you are responding. Officers are trained to observe during those first few seconds of contact, and those observations inform what happens next. What they cannot do based on a checkpoint stop alone is detain you for a full investigation without developing reasonable suspicion that you are actually impaired. The brief stop and the document check is what the checkpoint authorizes, nothing more. Here's where it matters most. Beyond your license, registration, and insurance, you are not required to answer investigative questions. Have you been drinking tonight? Where are you coming from? Where are you headed? These are questions designed to build probable cause, and you don't have to answer them. Your response is simple. I'd prefer not to answer questions without my attorney. Or just, I'm not answering questions. Politely, calmly, no argument. You hand over your documents. You don't answer investigative questions. And you don't elaborate. I've seen cases in Florida where the only thing that turned a routine checkpoint stop into a full DUI arrest was that the driver said, I've had a couple of beers. I was coming from a bar. I had a drink or two with dinner. These statements now become part of the probable cause story the officer writes in their report. You are not required to provide those building blocks for them, and giving them does not help you when they move you to a secondary screening. Now, here's the escalation point you need to understand. If an officer develops reasonable suspicion during that brief initial stop, they observe signs of impairment, detect an odor of alcohol, or notice something specific about how you are presenting, they now have grounds to direct you out of the checkpoint lane and into a secondary area for further investigation. That is the moment things shift. You've gone from a brief, standardized stop to something that looks more like a traditional DUI investigation. At secondary screening, field sobriety tests may be requested. Here's what most people don't know. Field sobriety tests are voluntary in Florida. Implied consent does not apply to them. You can decline. I decline to perform field sobriety tests. That's your right. Declining field sobriety tests does not by itself give them grounds to arrest you. The observations the officer already made during the stop can still factor into their assessment, but you haven't added a performance for them to interpret and then write about in their report. Can they search your car at a checkpoint? A checkpoint stop does not give police the right to search your vehicle. A search requires either your consent, a valid warrant, or a recognized legal exception, such as plain view of contraband or probable cause developed during the stop itself. If they ask to search, your answer is the same as it is at any traffic stop. I don't consent to any searches. Say it clearly. That statement is on the record. Without it, courts can find implied consent based on your behavior, your silence, or the way you responded to the situation. Don't let a checkpoint stop become a consent-based search because you didn't know you could say no. If an officer detains you beyond the initial stop or places you under arrest, stay calm, provide your documents, decline investigative questions, decline field sobriety tests if you haven't already, decline consent to search, and as clearly as possible say, I want an attorney. From that point forward, you do not answer questions. You do not explain yourself. You do not try to talk your way out of it at the roadside. You wait for your attorney. That's the job now. In my experience handling DUI cases in Florida, the people who came out in the strongest position weren't the ones who tried to charm their way through the checkpoint. They were the ones who understood what they were required to do, did exactly that, and stopped there. And here's everything you need to know at a Florida DUI checkpoint. Checkpoints are legal in Florida, but they have to follow specific procedural requirements. You can turn around before reaching one, legally and without consequence, as long as you don't commit a traffic violation doing it. You must provide your license, registration, and proof of insurance when asked. You are not required to answer investigative questions. Don't. Field sobriety tests are voluntary at checkpoints, same as they are during any stop. You can decline. You don't have to consent to a search. Say clearly that you don't. If you're moved to a secondary screening, stay calm and apply the same rules we've already discussed. If you're detained or arrested, you say, I want an attorney. Then silence. Every word you say at a checkpoint is a potential building block for probable cause. The fewer you provide, the less the state has to work with, and the more your attorney has to work with later. If you want to understand what comes after a DUI stop, specifically what refusing a breathalyzer means for your case and your license, that's covered in the previous video. It connects directly to everything in this one. And if you're facing a DUI charge in Florida right now, our number is in the description.